that when it counts, they play at their best. Whereas the Deplete from Beyond don't have that same fire lit underneath them, and I think are a little bit more liable to have things go horribly wrong.
All right, sorry, Zyro.
You know what? I think it all comes down to this first match. I think whoever takes this first match is going to take the series, be it a 2-game or 3-game series. But I think it all comes down to this Atal'Dazar here.
All right, let's see. The game's ready. Deplete from Beyond, Self-Reliance, lower semis. Let's get it.
All right, so we see Self-Reliance already doing this kind of method U pull that we've seen from them, just gathering everything up in the middle and pulling Razan, snapping Herudra all the way down there. Deplete from Beyond doing something very similar, as they also have a bunch of trash on top of Razan, both of them using their Bloodlust.
Yep, similar pulls. Now we know Deplete from Beyond likes to go for a slightly different pull, right? They like pulling that first trash pack on the right side of the instance, also with the boss, so they'll get a little bit more percentage than Self-Reliance here, just a little bit of a difference from them. But realistically, the same style of pull from both teams. Because of that slightly bigger pull Deplete from Beyond does, they do have a couple Skyscreamers alive still, while Self-Reliance is only now dealing with the boss. Self-Reliance will probably get a boss kill a little bit sooner because of that. But other than that, good first pull from both teams. No major issues, just dealt with the trash cleanly with that double Unholy DK comp.
Yeah, and this was a very important pull. We see what happens when it goes wrong, like we saw from Pain for a Femme earlier, which cost them so much time. So good on them for both doing this pull cleanly. Now, after this boss, we're going to see a different route from both of the teams because of the different trash they snapped onto Razan. So both of the teams are going to do a little bit of a different thing, as Self-Reliance finishing the boss off slightly faster, and they're going up to this right side here to Priestess, while Deplete from Beyond, I think they're doing a snap pull here, or do you remember? I think they're doing a snap pull here, or do you remember?
I don't quite remember what they do. I just remember their routing was a little different from what we saw from Method. I'm interested to see if either of them made that distinction that we saw from Method U, where they also pull the Colossus at the top of the stairs in with their major pull. I don't see Rintari going up there right now. Let's see if Herudra goes for that pull. They have actually pulled that in, so they're going for the Method U style pull, where they pull literally every single piece of available trash here. It is going to come down to whether or not the Unholy DKs are able to burn through the trash. Deplete from Beyond doing a good job to get everything down. No major issues for them, but all eyes on Self-Reliance now as Ashfell goes down, but it's all on the DKs right now. Can they get those Juggernauts down before they start charging? This is a dangerous moment from there. Now, those Juggernauts could do a lot of damage. Merciless Assault goes off. Furrow gets taken down to 10% HP, but he doesn't go down, is able to heal himself up, and with only the Colossus alive, they'll be able to kite this pull out, but this is going to cost them a lot of time. That one Colossus is at a massive amount of HP still.
This is actually the exact same thing that happened to them last time. This is 100% the same thing that happened. They did the pull, Ashfell went down, all of them bolstered really high up on the Colossus here. Ashfell going down again. I feel like I'm watching a VOD now. Here, Herudra going down too. I think the hand. No issues at all. They're in 50% trash now, and they're now engaging Priestess with the whole trash room here.
Yeah, it's actually, yeah, you're right. It's the exact same thing that happened the last time around. They just weren't able to pull it off cleanly, and that ended up costing them probably 30 or 45 seconds with the deaths on top of the kiting that they had to pull out there. Deplete from Beyond, of course, I think the most dangerous part of this dungeon is surprisingly isn't those massive pulls they do, but going into Priestess Alunza with no cooldowns is no joke, right? Those Unholy DKs aren't able to pump out the millions of damage that they normally can, you know, instead opting for only 300 or 400k AoE damage. I know, poor DKs, yeah. Right? But they're able to deal with that AoE pull, for the most part, relatively clean. They do have a Juggernaut still alive at about 30%, but as long as they're able to kite out those merciless charges, which it looks like they're doing just fine, and cleave it down with Priestess Alunza, they're going to be fine. And this next transfusion will end up killing off Priestess Alunza. So Deplete from Beyond so far, perfect run for them. And because they didn't end up pulling Void Weaver Malthier, they're actually going to have a massive advantage over Self-Reliance here.
Yeah, most definitely. What a clean run by them so far. And they're about to finish off Priestess here with this last transfusion cast that is going off. There we go, already moving ahead because they know the transfusion is going to finish her off. Now, unfortunately, they got a little bit of a bad timing here with the Fire Gauntlet. They have to wait for that first one to go through, but they should be okay. We're going to see them do a snapping pull here, as far as I remember, which can be pretty dangerous because if you look at Rintari right now, Rintari does not have Dwarf Racial available, also does not have Last Stand or Shield Wall. So this is going to be very dangerous pull for Rintari here on the Fraud Warrior.
Yep, looks like he's keeping pretty stable. Of course, once those swords are dead, most of the danger is gone, and he has had a 50 stack of necrotic there, so he actually cannot be healed at all right now. You can see he's jumping out to reset. Clix is going down. He has a 16 stack of his Eye of Corruption. Clix, you gotta get out of that, my dude. It's gonna kill you. Oh man, Rentari is able to cut it out with a Ring of Peace though, but he dies. He ended up going down. They do have the battle res available, but Curry's gone down now, and this is just kind of cascading out of control for them. They need to release and run back. Dr. J now going down as well. This is a big problem. Clix doesn't have any cooldowns to eat through this trash here.
Yeah, in the meantime, Self-Reliance, huge problems on their side too. Mikkel went down, they used the battle rest, but then Fura went down, and now they don't have a healer for this boss. Ash fell down as well. Transfusion going through on the heal here, did manage to use that blood in the very end. They might be able to finish this boss here, even with 3 people, but this is going to cost them a lot of time. Thankfully, DKs have a lot of self-healing, so they should be able to survive that transfusion. But still, I'm not even sure if 1 transfusion cast is enough, because the boss is going to take less damage because there's only 3 people with the debuff.
Yeah, it's 5% per player, right? So it'll do 15% of the boss's HP, so they have a little bit of health to chew through here still. But the Spirits of Golds aren't a big issue, right? They only need to get 3 of the blood pools. So yeah, the boss will go very low from this transfusion. They'll still have to end up doing a little bit of boss HP, but they're able to get through it. But those deaths on the board and the extra having to go for an entire extra transfusion cast ends up costing them way more time than that unfortunate pull for Deplete from Beyond does. Deplete from Beyond still a commanding lead in this dungeon, already getting through most of their trash. Of course, we know that this trash pull will get them to that 100% that they want to reach, because they will be kiting the Awakened mobs on the last boss.
Yeah, so it looks like the nice stun coming out here of the Mistweaver to make sure that shield is not being casted through, because it does put a DR on all of the mobs that are standing below it. So as Syra mentioned, 100% trash now. They're going to do a skip here. You see one of the hunters pulling the mobs to the left while everyone else goes to the right, so to not aggro these mobs. And then we'll see the Feign Death come out of Dr. J. And now it's Volkal left and the last boss for Deplete from Beyond, while Self-Reliance, they still need to do quite a bit of trash here.
Yeah, I mean, this is kind of the major problem we've had with Self-Reliance all season long, right? They've looked incredibly good at times, but when they make mistakes, it goes horribly, horribly wrong for them. They're mistakes where, you know, 1 or 2 DPS dead on a boss just costs you so much time. They might not be full team wipes, but they're essentially, you know, as bad in terms of how much time they cost you overall in the dungeon. And you really can't afford to do that when you have outright qualification on the line on their side. So hopefully we'll see them at least be able to clean up this dungeon, get their mentality right for the next dungeon, because it looks like Deplete from Beyond has an absolute vice grip on this dungeon right now.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing that can go wrong here for Deplete from Beyond is them not making the kite, right? Because we all know that kiting is a very dangerous and high-risk strategy. If something goes wrong, it will be a wipe and it will cost you a lot of time. So still I think that can happen for Deplete from Beyond. Well, Self-Reliance, they're now up to 100% trash as well. And they're going to go and deal with this obelisk here and still have to go to Volkal though. So they're going to kite this one to Volkal and deal with it as well. So they end up having only 2 obelisks to kite, while Deplete from Beyond has to kite 4.
Yeah, it's definitely not the most efficient strategy, right? Now, I'm not quite sure why they end up doing this with the Breaker of Heroes. You would think they'd find a more efficient way to deal with trash percentage, because, like you see, they're already at 100% trash. They don't need the extra percentage. This is just... I would have liked to see them come up with, you know, a more efficient strategy for this dungeon. They could have probably saved an extra 30 seconds by mathing this out and mapping this out a little bit more appropriately. But while we've been talking about that, Deplete from Beyond has already chewed through all of Volkal's HP. He is going to be going down at 8 minutes and 45 seconds into the dungeon. And, you know, while they're not going as fast as Method EU was, they're still going at a pretty fast speed. They'll probably be on pace for maybe a sub 11-minute run, which will be pretty close to what they got in their time trials, which is still, you know, all things considered, a pretty impressive run from Deplete from Beyond. But it's all going to come down to Igloo, how he does that kiting strategy. As we've seen from before, sometimes the Beckoner of Chaos just kind of likes to not run. Sometimes he just stands still and casts a little bit. So you have to kind of change your kiting strategy up a little bit. We saw Azalea was able to change it on the fly yesterday in their match in Atal'Dazar. We'll see if Igloo's going to be able to pull that off as well here.
Yep, so all eyes on Igloo now on Deplete from Beyond side here. They have all 4 obelisks he needs to kite. And on top of that, they did not clear the middle pack. that means there's going to be less room for Igloo to kite. And if it's patrolling in a bad way, then it can definitely cause some issues. So look at Igloo now as he's gathering all of these mobs, using his revival to get rid of the first 3 debuffs from Zamorak, and then teleporting, transcending to the other side of that gate. Now, the Soul Rend is being applied to Igloo once the Asma reaches 100% energy, but he has an in cap to deal with that one, and then it's all going to be about him kiting and the Fire Gauntlet.
Oh yeah, the Paralyze makes it so he doesn't have to worry about that at all, and his teammates don't have to worry about targeting it. And yeah, like we said, all eyes on Igloo now as he's going for a nice stroll around the dungeon. Never mind those weird void mobs chasing him around. He's fine. He'll be just okay. Just don't let them get anywhere near you, Igloo. Watch out for the fire in front of you too.
There we go, Fire Gauntlet.
Yeah, he just dampened right through it.
Yeah, that's what I thought
okay.
as well, right? They're really quick, and if you get hit by one fire, you definitely do survive with dampen, right? But now he doesn't have that cooldown anymore in case something does happen. If one of the mobs maybe decides to come too close and get him a melee hit, he does not have the cooldown available anymore. And now we see the Bloodlust come out of Deplete from Beyond as well, and the boss is dropping lower and lower. It looks really good.
Yep, and you see, pre-place that Transcendence on the stairs there, and looking at the Awakened mobs he has here,
there's one missing.
only 3 of them are up here, so there's one still sitting on the stairs down there. He's going to have to change this kiting route on the fly here. He might be able to actually kite around in a circle in this room if the one doesn't come up the stairs. Yeah, he's lost now. He doesn't know what he's doing. He's just running in circles. Oof. There is the 4th one. He will be able to get the Transcend off here, but if that fire is in the way like it is right now, this is going to be really close. He needs to not get meleeed here. Do not get meleeed.
Ooh, Spirit Breaker.
Ooh, this is close.
Okay, he did manage to outrange the Spirit Breaker cast, but it already started casting, and Yasma is dropping in lower and lower, and he should be able to do this, but how close that was for Igloo here. Well done.
Oh, man. That,
Wow, I kind of needed a second on that one. Oh my goodness. You know, I kind of like hyped it up at the beginning. I was like, man, they're doing such a great job of like planning everything out so that they don't, stand in fire, so they don't get melee. And then like both of them happen and they still get it. Deplete from Beyond with a great win there, and they just continued to play their own game at that point. As Self-Reliance just wasn't really able to get the momentum that they needed, Retnos.
Yeah, Self-Reliance kind of playing a slow and steady strategy in Atal'Dazar. Unfortunately, it was slow, but it was not even steady this time, as they had unfortunate wipes and things going wrong for them.
Well, it was just also the same things that they were having issues with previously in the tournament.
Yeah, I'm a little surprised that Colossus pull went the same way for them, given that had already happened to them once. It's very uncharacteristic thing for an MDI team to lose 30 seconds or a minute to something and then do it again the next day.
Yeah, and it reminds me a lot of like Shell's Angels in early MDI days, where they would put together these ridiculous aggressive pulls, and we'd see multiple times they'd fail on this specific pull. Then the next day comes around and they go to the losers bracket, and they perfected it after that. Right? That was always a team that was so good at ironing those things out and figuring out what those problems were, and it's kind of disappointing not to see it. So what else do you have to break down for us here, Dratnos?
Yeah, so let's look at those robots just chasing down Self-Reliance again with a very similar pattern to what happened last time. I'm not sure exactly how this is supposed to go differently for them, but Deplete from Beyond was able to make this pull work. I think it might just be some more kill commands into those Colossi, a little bit more single target damage focus into them, rather than focusing on the AoE. Deplete from Beyond wasn't a perfect run either. They did have a trash pull after Alunza go slightly south for them. It claimed their battle res. Rentari went down, but they were able to save the pull, which is impressive given how many mobs they were fighting at the time. It did slow them down, though, by a solid 30 seconds. Nowhere near as much as Self-Reliance lost when they had multiple deaths on the Priestess Alunza fight. That drags out the fight by so much because you don't get the extra transfusion damage as the fight goes on, and you're just trying to do everything with less people. You're getting more ad spawning. That really, really hurt Self-Reliance. And then Deplete from Beyond was just able to do that kiting on the last boss in a way that we've never seen before, just yeeting through the fire with Dampen Harm up.
Just brute forcing
Yeah,
it.
that's a bold strategy and a beautiful transcendence at the end as well. That he did a good job of keeping the awakened enemies from getting too separated from each other. That meant that he got into this danger zone of almost getting murdered by them, but that's what you need to do in order to keep them from snapping back if they get too far away from you.
Yep, and at that point, it's just being able to gauge your own level of risk going into it as well, which is always so very impressive to know, okay, I can take this, brute force hit from the fire. I can take a hit from
right.
one of the
That
mobs
meant that he needed to save his dampen as well, because he didn't dampen on pull so that he could have it for going through the fire. It's not like it was a last minute, uh-oh, the fire's here. Well, I guess I'm going to pop dampen. It was more like I'm saving dampen for during the kite rather than on pull, which makes the on pull component of that strategy even more dangerous.
Yeah, and it's also, I guess it's a great way to test it as well, that when they're saying, okay, well, you look at everybody who's practicing for these kites to be able to put them together. They pop Cocoon, Fort Brew, Dampen Harm, everything, and of course they survive every time. So big kudos to Igloo as well to be saying, do I need to have all of this? What if I save it for later and then my run is more consistent? Then I'm going to be able to carry it forward. So interested to look at how Workshop's going to be going for both these teams that is going to be coming up next, Nagura. What are you going to be looking at from Self-Reliance in particular for this one?
I think Self-Reliance is a very consistent and a very good Workshop, actually. We've seen them 2 times so far. They won both, and they actually beat their own time trial time. They got the number 4 seed in time trials compared to number 6 seed for Deplete from Beyond, so they were actually better for this specific dungeon. And yeah, they beat their own time by 4 seconds earlier today. Only 1 death against Pain for Femme in a very, very close game. And there was a lot of pressure on them too, right? It was the last game of the series. If they would have lost that one, they would have been out. So they definitely showed that they can perform under pressure. And there's going to be lots of pressure on them, because if they lose this one, they're not 100% out because there's still a tiebreaker. But they definitely would like to win this one and not have the pressure of doing the tiebreaker later on, of course.
That's right. It's going to be on the line for them, probably weighing down for them as well as Workshop gets underway in our lower semis.
All right, so we see the double, triple Hunter come in by both of these teams, which we've seen before as well and also being played in the time trials. Now, let's see if they can deal with this trash here cleanly, but I don't think we've seen a team that had problems with this at the very start.
Yeah, I mean, like the worst we've seen is maybe one of the little tonks not getting smashed, but Deplete from Beyond opting to not use the hammer at all, opting instead to use those rocket barrages to deal with all the trash, and perfect
faster.
execution from them. Everything is already dead from them. Now, they'd only give him like 2 or 3 seconds over the hammer smash from Self-Reliance, but hey, we'll take any advantage from playing well. That was good to see from them.
Yep, and now we're going to see how to deal with this first boss, as they have to wait for the RP event to happen. Unfortunately, there's nothing they can do here. They just need to wait. There's no trash they can pull or nothing to get ahead, so they just gotta wait. What about the teams popping their bloodlust immediately? And now we're gonna see them use those hammers to do damage onto No Mercy while kiting the Platinum Pummeler. Now we even see the tanks come in to bait the hammer, because the more players are underneath the hammer to bait it, the more damage it's actually going to do. So very well done by Self-Reliance, and Dr. J actually going down, unfortunately.
That's a little weird. Did he go down to the hammer there?
Maybe in combination with the Flame Jet? Vent Jet?
Potentially, yeah. Now, they did end up trying to battle res him, but I feel like that would be a weird use of battle res, considering you can just use the hammers to deal with most of the boss HP. So I feel, yeah, he's not going to be taking the battle res here. It will cost him a little bit of time because they do have 1 less player underneath the hammer, and of course the hammer does more damage per player underneath it. But yeah, they'll be able to pretty much finish off the boss with this last hammer hit. So good on them to not commit the battle res here. They have that later on in the dungeon. This hammer should finish off the Platinum Pummeler. So yeah, they lost about 15 seconds, plus the 5 seconds from the death timer there, but it could have been a lot worse. If they committed the battle res and need it later on in the dungeon, that could have pretty much lost them the dungeon.
Yeah, definitely. I think I agree of saving that battle res here, because in the end they already lost time from the death, and resting him back up would have maybe saved them, let's say, 4 seconds, maybe 5, so not a big deal. And they're going down as well for Self-Reliance here. This is going to be a much bigger loss for them, because they need his damage here for this huge pull that they're doing. They need to use their turtle as well to line of sight to immune the living waste explosion plastic explosives coming out.
Yeah, I mean, this is kind of a scary moment in the dungeon. The thing is, you can line of sight almost all of these explosives by going to where we see Rentari sitting here, or using either of those posts on either side to line of sight. So while the explosives are a major issue, you should be able to line of sight them, and we're seeing both teams pull off that strat. Like you said, and unfortunately going down, they will be able to battle res him, but I'm not sure they can. I think he's in a bad spot to be battle res, so they're going to actually have to finish the trash off, which will cost them the amount of time that they would save by pulling the trash with the boss, which we're seeing Deplete from Beyond do. Unfortunately, though, Rentari has gone down for them, and they're going to have to scramble to try to get a res off while everyone furiously kites things around. Even when he gets res, he's going to have an issue grabbing aggro and everything, but the venting flames going off is going to be a full team wipe for them. Maybe Dr. J can get a feign death off, but that's just, I mean, that's about as bad as it gets for Deplete from Beyond.
Yeah, that is a huge time loss. Just Rentari going down there. I mean, they did have a battle rest available, but because they don't have a class for a battle rest, they needed to do the engineering rest while kiting all of the mobs, and then the boss started casting his AoE, and it was just too much for them to recover from. So very, very unfortunate as they need to release and do another skip here. Or actually, they need to deal with those. Thankfully, they did not completely reset. They actually managed to kite it backwards here, I think, because Dr. J didn't actually go down. So that is a little bit of a save, because if they would have reset, of course, they would have healed up all the way. So slight time save, but overall still a huge loss, of course.
Yeah, I mean, you can see they have Kujo down to 40% already on the side of Self-Reliance, and they made a mistake. If Deplete from Beyond didn't have that death on Rentari, they would be done with Kujo by now, I'm pretty sure. So yeah, I mean, even if they were able to slowly save the pull, they just lost, I don't know, probably 2 minutes from that mistake. It's going to be tough for them to get back into this dungeon. Self-Reliance is going to have to do something similar to let Deplete from Beyond back in.
Yeah, definitely a disaster here for Deplete from Beyond. Self-Reliance are about to finish off Kujo as we get a very nice observer view on Deplete from Beyond side here. They now still have some processing units alive. They need to finish them off. Rentari out of defensive cooldown, so no shield wall or last stand available for him. But since they are very low, he should be fine. There we go. Only Kujo left for them to deal with now. Self-Reliance, on the other hand, already passed that fire gauntlet, and they're able to engage that next trash pack very soon.
Oh yeah, getting up, not opting to pull the neutral mobs. That is free trash percentage, doesn't really do anything to the group, and it also resets hunter cooldowns. We've seen some teams, it's such a weird distinction. We've seen some teams pull those, we've seen some teams opt to not pull those. They're neutral mobs, they don't really do anything. I don't really see the reason not to pull them. I don't know, maybe Grievous affix is something they're worrying about. Maybe they'll take random damage on the group and go through Furrow's mana.
To the proc explosive, maybe?
That's also possible too, but with a triple BM comp, I wouldn't be worried about that, right? I don't know, maybe it's just a safety thing.
Yeah.
I don't know, it's a weird distinction. I see some teams doing it, some don't.
Sometimes, I think explosive is definitely a little bit of an affix that you have to pray to the RNG gods for, because sometimes you pull 10 mobs and there's one explosive, and then sometimes you pull 5 mobs and there's 20 explosives. So definitely a little bit of an RNG factor, but as you mentioned, Hunter is actually pretty good at dealing with them, so should not be a big deal, specifically because in Warcraft you can't really pull that many mobs on top of each other, so...
Well, I mean, you know, on the other hand, playing devil's advocate, if they did pull the neutral mob and did somehow wipe to explosive, we'd be questioning why would you even bother pulling those neutral mobs in the first place? So I could see it going both ways. I think it makes sense to go for either strategy, for sure.
Yep, but Deplete from Beyond now did manage to finish off Kujo. They're up to 40% trash as they finished off all of those processing units, meaning they don't actually have to deal with the robots on the bridge later on in front of the last boss. But yeah, still a huge disadvantage for Deplete from Beyond that they have to overcome somehow. In fact, it's almost impossible to overcome in this dungeon because the amount of pulls you can do are very straightforward. They can't really make up any time by doing something crazy later on. So it really is on Self-Reliance here. If Self-Reliance does their strategy cleanly from here on out, as we've already seen their strat, then it's definitely going to be Self-Reliance winning this one. But yeah, lots of things that can go wrong still.
I mean, Deplete from Beyond. Pull the neutral mobs. I mean, I don't know if it's actually something that really matters. We're splitting hairs. Harudra showing off a nice little snap. Oh yeah, overall damage for sure. Gotta look good on the meters. Harudra showing off the snap point there for Void of her mouth there. You know, hop on top of a box and a giant spider appears on your face. That's pretty neat. You know, saving time by fixing travel time by using snap points is always what we like to see out of teams. And yeah, they probably saved themselves a good 10 seconds just by making sure that they didn't have to wait for this caster mob to catch up with them. Of course, Woodrow out there kind of likes to sit there and cast if anyone's in range, so the hunters won't be able to do damage, and that actually saves a lot of time for them here.
Yep, definitely. And once they finish off this mob, we'll see one of them, probably the tank, go out of the portal and engage the boss, so everyone else gets dragged out of that Nyalotha realm. And we're also going to see them pull trash on top of this boss, which can be very dangerous because it is fortified, Grievous, and also explosives that they have to deal with on top of dealing with all of the spark flags mechanics.
Yep. And the explosive is the major thing right here. We've seen a lot of teams end up going down to the explosive, and on top of that, that plant that spawns in the corner also can spawn explosives. But the hunters, it's really on the hunters here. Hunters are great at dealing with explosive. Of course, they have a lot of abilities that will just straight up one-shot them, but it's a matter of spreading out your explosive priorities, right? If all 3 of your hunters target the same explosive and then 2 other ones go off, you're not doing a great job of dealing with them. So there is still a skill cap to it. It's not just, oh, LOL, you have 3 hunters, deal with the explosives. Forehead, but they're doing a good job at dealing with it right now, right? The beast cleaving down from the hunters. I mean, you can even see Harudra's popping off with the damage too. I imagine he's running some sort of Twilight Dev 3 enchant that also, or corruption rather, that helps him do damage, and getting some nice procs on that pull really helps deal with all the trash. And of course, with it all dead, the hunters can go about their merry way, just single targeting down.
Yeah, he must have pressed that Twilight Devastation quite a lot on this pull, as he's up to, he did almost 200k DPS earlier, almost doing the same damage as one of the hunters, so well done Harudra using that ability. As Deplete from Beyond now did finish off the trash, they're dealing with Void Weaver as well, just, again, it's going to be in fact, it's going to be the exact same strategy that Deplete from Beyond is going to do here. We're not going to see anything completely different, because it's just not possible to do in Workshop. Workshop, very straightforward dungeon, so at this point, unfortunately, just not much they can do to make up. I mean, maybe in another dungeon they could say, you know what, we're behind, let's try to pull all 4 obelisks with the last boss. But that's something you can't really do here, because it's not really going to save you any time.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy how similar this workshop dungeon is to like Upper Mechagon, right? There's like 1 or 2 big pulls that kind of make or break the dungeon, and then there's 4 relatively difficult to deal with bosses. And I think that actually makes for like a really exciting dungeon to deal with, right? I think this workshop has a couple more difficult pulls, like for instance the one we're seeing Deplete from Beyond pull off now. This trash pull into the boss is actually a lot more dangerous than it seems. There's a lot of single target damage that can go out, as well as some group AoE that the healer has to keep everyone up there, and it seems there's a lot of single target damage that can go out, as well as some group AoE that the healer has to keep everyone up through. There's a lot of small little mechanics to deal with in his trash packs, so I really like the way this dungeon plays out, just in general as a dungeon, but also it works really well for an NDI speedrun dungeon too.
Yeah, definitely, and we see Self-Reliance now finishing off those spider tanks. They're on their way to that last bridge area before they go to the last boss. Of course, they have to deal with 3 obelisks on the last boss, which can cause lots of issues, because there's not that much room to deal with in the last boss area, and on top of that you also have Grievous and Explosive, which can cause issues too. But first we need to see them deal with this trash. Now these 2 robots that Harudra is pulling right now, Deplete from Beyond does not have to deal with those. So the pull on the bridge for Deplete from Beyond is going to be slightly faster, but it's not going to make up the time that they're behind on, unfortunately.
Oh yeah, I mean, that small trash advantage for them is not really going to be that major of a thing, right? They'll be able to skip 1 trash pack on the bridge, but with how far ahead Self-Reliance is right now, there's not really a whole lot outside of maybe a full wipe on the last boss that will get Deplete from Beyond back into this dungeon. They're just so far ahead at this point from the mistake that Deplete from Beyond did. It's all eyes on them, and you know, I kind of am rooting for Self-Reliance here, because of course after this, our third game of the series is Junkyard. Or Junkyard.
Oh no.
I can't wait. I'm so excited.
Oh, okay, so we're gonna see a skip here from Self-Reliance, because they don't actually need more trash. They have enough with the obelisk they're gonna be playing with on the last boss. So a nice off tank here by Harudra, and the Ring of Peace coming out of Furo. Now we see the Shadow Melt to de-aggro all of those mobs, and now it's gonna be the make or break it moment where they need to pull the boss with the 3 obelisks, popping that bloodlust. Let's see if they can do it.
This is it. This is the make or break portion of the dungeon for Self-Reliance here, being able to pull off this triple Awakened Mob pull. Of course, the Hunters are able to do with that Urgroth Bakebreaker of Heroes on their own, so the major focus is going to be the Beckoner of Chaos. They're going to get that down as quickly as possible, so they don't have to worry about those Fear Circles, and then once that's down, they'll probably focus more on cleaving with the boss, but already still cleaving down the boss quite a bit, down to 60% HP already.
Yep, a lot of damage here. It really looks like they're trying to maximize their damage on the boss instead of focusing some of these mobs down here, which is incredibly risky, but doing a good job so far. Harudra still has Shield Wall available as well, and a lot of the turtles on the Hunters are still there too, so lots of defensives in case something does go wrong. Deplete from Beyond, on the other hand, now managed to get to that bridge area too, and as I mentioned before, they don't have to deal with these bots. They only have to deal with the 3 mobs in front of it, which makes his pull a little bit faster, but yeah, still a big lead for Self-Reliance as they're about to finish off these Awakened mobs, and after the Awakened mobs are down, it's going to be very, few things that can wipe you here.
Yeah, I mean, with Breaker of Heroes going down, they just have a fortified King Mechagon to deal with, and let's be honest, I don't think it's that difficult of a boss, even on Tyrannical for these teams, with the corruptions that they have available to them, with the absolute insane damage that the healing that the healer output has in the term of the Mistweaver Monk. I mean, they just have so much available to them. These Hunters are absolutely going to shred through King Mechagon, and I'm not even trying to caster curse them, right? I just think it's just the likelihood of them wiping to this after dealing with the Awakened mobs is very, very low.
Yeah, most definitely. We see them deal with the explosives and the things from beyond here. As you can see, it being trapped on the side by Mikkel. Well done using that trap to not get hit by that one. And yeah, as long as you don't have any double hits for the Giga Blast here, of course, you want to make sure you spread out. Don't get hit by anyone else's blast, and then you should be totally fine. And the boss is melting as well with the huge amount of damage those Hunters provide with the corruption setup that they're running. We see that Magneto Arm come out, but all of the teams avoiding it pretty nicely. The thing from beyond chasing one of the Hunters here didn't manage to avoid it, and another one. Oh, poor Astro.
Watch out for that thing. What is it? Okay. Quick little side note here. What is it with Blizzard and naming things like Thing from something? I think one of the most ridiculous mob names ever was from Star Augur Atreus, the Thing That Should Not Be. I could not take that mob serious at all. That was the most ridiculous name ever.
It was a very dangerous mob though, and I didn't like it. But yeah, Omega Buster going down now. King Mechagon spawning, and this is going to be the 1-1. Self-Reliance evening this game out against Deplete from Beyond, and we're going to go to Junkyard.
Junkyard, 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 Junkyard. Self-Reliance tying up the series. And we're going to have we're going to have a game ahead of us, all right, Drentos?
Oh, yes. We are returning to the Junkyard. You thought you'd escaped it, but no, it is back. These two teams have had very different experiences on Junkyard yesterday. Self-Reliance was part of the one of the two 25-minute fiascos, whereas Deplete from Beyond was able to get it done in just 16 minutes flat, winning against Paint for Femme. So very different experience between those two teams yesterday. But of course, every Junkyard is a new opportunity for things to go horribly, horribly wrong. So there's no guarantees whether or to whom it'll happen this time.
That's right. And, Junkyard sneaks up and could take down and tackle anybody on that one. But hey, Self-Reliance getting themselves back into this series. How are we feeling about that one, Zyro?
It's hard to say. Deplete from Beyond kind of had I don't know, that wipe was really not what we expect from them. Although I think that's actually happened to Harudra in this dungeon before, has it not? And I think it's either, or not Harudra, sorry, Rentari. But I think it happened to him on Sparkflux 2 weeks ago in the second EU Cup, and not on Kujo. But the thing to remember is those trash pulls where you're pulling trash into the boss is probably the scariest moment in the dungeon for your tank, and seeing them go down there is, I think it's probably one of the more common places for your tank to die. The unfortunate part of that is usually it'll just result in a full team wipe, which is what we saw from Deplete from Beyond here.
That's right. And let's start talking about some of those wipes as well here.
Yeah, so right off the start of the bat, Deplete from Beyond had a little bit of sloppiness with Dr. J dying to one of those hammer smashes on the first boss. Not able to quite get out of that AoE quick enough. I'm not sure if that was a corruption slow or what exactly was going on there. On the side of Self-Reliance, things weren't perfect either. They weren't able to quite meet their time trial time here, but they were pretty close. They did have a death in that Living Waste section, which I believe delayed their Kujo pull as well. but it's nowhere near as bad as what happened to Deplete from Beyond, who experienced that brutal full wipe we saw on Cujo. It was prolonged as well over a period of time where they were trying to still make it work, and that's the worst kind of wipe. It really just shut them out of the game. And that let Self-Reliance take it home on the last boss, and now we are going into this Game 3 where Self-Reliance are playing for this invite to the Global Finals. All comes down to this.
That's right. So to reiterate, Dranos, what's the situation on tiebreakers with this series for everybody who just tuned in?
So currently, Self-Reliance and the boys are both tied for that 4th slot, the final invite from the EU region to our Global Finals. Deplete from Beyond has already made it, so they're already safe regardless of what happens here. Self-Reliance, if they win this series, will also make it. They'll have more points than the boys. If they lose this series, they will be tied with the boys, and we will play a tiebreaker match after the Grand Finals today.
All right, there's a lot going to be going towards it. Do you think they're going to be able to tie this up, Nagura? You think Self-Reliance is going to be able to tie up with the boys going to the tiebreaker?
I don't know. I mean, we've seen them do a really fast Junkyard, actually. So, okay, we saw them do a really fast one, 14 minutes and 4 seconds. And then we've also seen them have 33 deaths in another Junkyard.
Yeah.
So, if they do their strategy properly, they theoretically should be faster than Deplete from Beyond, who had a 16-minute time. But it's Junkyard, so...
It is.
It is Junkyard.
That's right. Oh my goodness. And so, just the responsibility onto both of these teams for, not having deaths. When does it become... When do you have to have, like, the gut check, I would say, Zyro, for changing some of your strategies around, maybe trying to be able to find different ways to pump the brakes so that you're not losing out on any of, your Zap bots, for example? I mean, they got to be able to find some areas where they're just consistently having these deaths, or do they just say, we've done this in practice, we'll do it on the tournament?
I think it's tough to say specifically for this matchup because we've seen both of these teams have good runs in Junkyard this weekend. Self-Reliance, like we talked about, they had a 1404 work. I think I'm looking at Workshop. They had a 1404 Junkyard earlier this weekend against the boys. And Deplete from Beyond, they had like a 1550, which is still relatively clean. But I think that the best times that we've seen from both teams are close enough together where you can't really talk about looking at your strat and playing it safe. You have to go for your fastest strat. Otherwise, if the other team also goes for their fastest strat and is able to pull it off and you go for a safer strat, you're just going to outright lose. So you have to just hope that you play up to your performance that you've established through practice and play better. The problem is, we know how volatile this Junkyard is. I mean, Fortified Raging is an absolutely ridiculous combination. And throwing Grievous on top of that is just mean.
It really is mean.
It's real mean. Oh boy. And we've seen tanks get melted 100-0. We've seen DPS, rip threat instantly and just get destroyed in this dungeon as all of those mobs hit enrage. So this one's going to be, not only the dungeon that's going to decide the fate of both these teams, or Self-Reliance's fate, I should say, on whether or not they go to the Global Finals, but it's also one of them that can just kind of break their spirits in some ways. But I guess it's kind of on them because they also did end up banning Motherlode Time Trial Dungeon. They did end up banning Toldagor. So, all right. Ready to go into game, guys, as Deplete from Beyond and Self-Reliance are now tied.
So we see Havoc, Demon Hunter, plus double Unholy Decay. This means they're planning to do some very big pulls in this dungeon.
All right, one sec. Before we start up here, I'm going to flip a coin. Heads, they're going to have a clean run. Tails, they're going to have a Clown Fiesta. Okay, ready?
Ready?
Heads. Okay, it's going to be a clean run.
There
Sorry,
we
guys.
go.
No Fiesta. Both teams 0 deaths. Going to be the first ever double clean run of Junkyard as Self-Reliance goes into their massive first pull, with Deplete from Beyond also gathering up the first pull, giving us an opportunity to show off this massive Unholy Decay damage as both Mikkel and Anda go up to over 1.3 million DPS. So far, so good for Self-Reliance.
The coin has spoken, as we see Rentari actually topping the damage meters for a very long time, up until the DKs were ramping up their own damage, and now Trash is going down on their side. But Self-Reliance definitely dealing with it a little bit faster. Igloo going down. They do commit a battle rest here immediately, and Igloo is back up. But yeah, definitely already a little bit of a mistake here on Deplete from Beyond side.
That's your only battle res for the next 8.5 minutes gone. That's unideal. Now they will have a battle res available For the last boss pull, which is really like the only other place that I would even think you would need it, maybe the trash in the Gunker area is important too, but those are like the major difficulty points of the dungeon. Seeing it, I mean, that was a really untimely death too. That was like as the trash pull was being finished. They probably could have even finished off that trash pull without the healer, but going for the safety play of keeping them up just because they have that Grievous affix in place, I don't know, it's a tough call to make for sure.
Most definitely, but we see Self-Reliance now engaging the boss with a lot of trash as well, committing their Bloodlust, and it looks like Deplete from Beyond is doing the same thing, just slightly delayed because of the problem they had with the healer death on the previous pull. So definitely already a little bit of an advantage for Self-Reliance here, as they just had a much cleaner trash pull plus boss. Now, one thing that is definitely something we need to look at is the fact that there's bots in this dungeon, shock bots, grease bot, and welding bots, which do increase your damage by a lot, and losing those bots is a pretty big time loss. So this is why this is such a volatile dungeon, not only because of Fortified and Raging, which is a very difficult combination, but also because the amount of time you lose if you have any sort of death.
Yeah, and the important thing to mention as well is, like you said, every single time you die, you lose your buffs, and you have to commit time to going and finding your backup bots. Otherwise, you're losing out on a potential 30 to 40% of your damage output. It's important, of course, to mention as well that those zap procs also scale with haste, so the more haste you have, the more potential procs you can get. So that's why we're seeing, you know, Demon Hunter, a chosen pick. They have that Furious Gaze as a right buff that gives them a large amount of flat haste. And then, of course, they have the DKs, which also like stacking expedient traits as well in this dungeon for a large amount of percentage haste, just so they can get more zap procs. And you know, if we could actually take a look at the damage meters, you're going to see every single one of these players, including the tank and the healer, having zap as their #1 damage by quite a hefty amount.
Yeah, definitely. Shock spots are going to be very, very important for this dungeon, specifically for those big pulls they're doing. And we know that Self-Reliance actually does 3 obelisks with the last boss. I wonder if they continue to do that after those 33 deaths they had in this one dungeon, or if they actually want to change up their strategy and try to deal with less obelisks here. But they already deal with this Urgrath here, which is the tank master, so they definitely don't have to deal with that one later on. And now we're going to see this interesting pull where they pull everything around the corner to help them gather up the trash, which is pretty nice.
Yeah, I mean, this is I think they're the first team that we saw pull this. Yeah, they are the first team that we saw pull this pull off, and it's a really nice pull. It saves a lot of time as well, just gathering up the trash, because there's so many mobs in this particular pull that like to cast things as well. But one of the extra benefits is that Nano on that bike actually cannot crash into this corner, so your melee DPS players don't have to worry about getting hit by that. So you're going to see he's going to come pretty close with this next charge, but he's going to be right outside, hop off his bike, and join the crew inside, and they'll be able to just cleave him down with the rest of the trash. Now everything is into that Raging affix, so you're going to have to keep an eye on the tank here. You saw Haruja dropping incredibly low, and on top of that, he also has an Eye of Corruption on top of him, doing even more damage to him, but it looks like that has now gone away. But both DKs have gone down at the same time, and that is not what you want to see. They do have a battle res available, but it has to be in the form of that engineering res, and even at that point, they'll only be able to get one of the DPS players up.
Yeah, and they're all raging here. The mobs that are still alive. Ashwell is trying his best to finish off these mobs, but Ashwell going down now too. This might be a full team wipe, and this is going to be costly because the boss is going to reset, meaning that the whole boss needs to be replayed by them, and on top of that, they lose all of their shock bots, and they actually committed a rest here as well now.
They committed, but they all had, both Furrow and Haruja have 4 stacks of the Grievous here, and Haruja's going to go down to the Grievous stacks. And this is it's a full team wipe. Yeah, it's a full team wipe from them. Their battle res is down, and I'm speechless. That was, did the DKs die to something from Nano? Was it a crash that they died to?
It could have been from like a swirly from the trash as well, right? Maybe they didn't see it because of the ground effect, and they just got one shot because they were raging.
It was all raging, yeah, the raging, yeah. That's hate to see it for sure. Hate to see it.
Definitely hate to see it. Deplete from Beyond, on the other hand, they did a huge trash pull first, and then dealt with the boss afterwards. They did pull the boss on top after, so a little bit of a safer play on their side. Turns out it was worth it because they didn't have the issues that Self-Reliance has here as they're about to finish off Nano here. Then there's only Trixie left to deal with. Self-Reliance, as we mentioned, they have to find those bots now at this point. They lost bots on everybody, but it looks like they're immediately going back to the boss. I'm not really sure how many bots they found on their way, but yeah, definitely a huge time loss for them. Deplete from Beyond, they're only 1% behind in trash, so At this time, it's only the difference in boss and one obelisk as well. Deplete from Beyond actually did not deal with the obelisk yet.
I'm not sure if they could have had 5 bots on bot on every single one of their players just running back to this boss. I know there's 2. I know of 2 in this arena that they could have gotten on the way. There's also one like right in the corner that they're in right now, so they could potentially have 2 bots on their DPS players. But I'm not sure if there's any more than that that they could have easily gotten right before engaging this boss. And you can see just how dangerous this is. People just dropping into Grievous and nice little view of the Mechagon there. Thanks for that one, observers.
Can we get that view again once we are up to 30 deaths, please, later on?
Oh, no.
Yeah, so it looks like Deplete from Beyond is gathering up a pretty big pull as Rentari is popping that Lightfoot potion, gathering up everything. Now, Igloo does have that revive already, so they can actually stand in the consume cast and making sure they nuke everything down, revival being used to get rid of that debuff, but he needs to... There we go. Okay, it looked like
there it is.
That
Wow.
was really close though, because they were dropping pretty low.
Oh yeah, yeah. That's the that's actually a pretty neat strat used to deal with 2 of these toxic monstrosities at the same time. Just having people run in to get that healer debuffs, and then they just revival them all off. There's really no other good way of dealing with that, unless you just want to have your entire group running away from that consume for the entire duration of it, which is, you know, nice 10 seconds of just not doing full DPS. So that's a good way to deal with it. I'm not quite sure what they're going to do for this consume. Do they have a DK run into it with AMS or something like that? Or you can just single dispel it as well, right?
Yeah, single dispel or...
Yeah, okay.
Not sure. Okay, so Clicks actually is a
Demon
debuff on
Hunter
him.
took
There
it.
we go. So
Yeah, they'll just dispel it.
Dispel on Clicks, and then I'm not sure if AMS actually helps for it at all. I think it's too much.
Curry
right?
did use it there. But yeah, it probably doesn't block all of it, so that's fine. No big issue from them. I mean, this is the section of the dungeon that we've seen a lot of just random deaths go out on players because there's just so much DPS output on the entire group. Of course, once everything goes into raging as well, those slime elementals can do a lot of damage with that sort of frontal they do. As long as you keep everything sort of stacked up with those individual stuns that DKs have available, and of course the Nova, the Chaos Nova from the Demon Hunters, they've got a good team comp to kind of deal with all of the potential problems in this dungeon. Now, of course, the big thing here is being able to pull off this pull where you pull the trash into the boss and letting your DKs do work. If you're able to pull this off, there's really only one major point in the dungeon that they have left to deal with, but we know that's a major issue because pulling a Wicked Mobs with the last boss is kind of scary, and they still have all 4 of them alive.
Yep, that is definitely very scary if Deplete from Beyond is planning on doing all of those 4 obelisks with the last boss. You know what? Maybe they actually, maybe they can do it, but maybe they were like, you know what? We're just gonna see how it goes, see what the other team is doing. If it's a close game, we're gonna try to do all 4. If we're really far ahead, we're just gonna deal with some of them. It's definitely something you can adapt on the fly in Junkyard, because Junkyard is a very open dungeon, and you can definitely just go back and do an obelisk to make the last boss easier and just decide it on the fly. While Self-Reliance now, they're not actually that far behind anymore, as they did a pretty substantial pull here in this ganker area. Now they're on their 2nd pull. Once this is done, they can also engage the boss. So still a bit in favor for Deplete from Beyond here, but Self-Reliance dealt with 1 obelisk already, which is the difference here on top of the trash difference.
Yeah, and the important thing to mention as well is that in the travel time between Trixie and Nano's Junkyard area and moving to Gunker, and while dealing with the trash at Gunker, there are plenty of shock bots in that area, so they should have regained all of their shock bots on all their players, as well as some of the other bots as well, maybe for their tank and healer, just to get out that extra damage. So they should be back to full power here as they kind of start getting ready to pull Gunker on the side of Self-Reliance. There's too many Junk and Gunk words in here.
I agree.
With Gunker already going down for Deplete from Beyond, you kind of have to think, if they have someone on their team watching this stream, they have to know that they're ahead by a pretty significant margin at this point. They're probably a good minute and a half ahead. Maybe they do opt to go for a safe play, 100% play.
Should.
Maybe they do opt to pull one extra obelisk than what they normally do. I feel like that would be the safety play for the dungeon here. But at the same time, they're not really playing for anything right now. They're playing for individual tournament prowess. That being, actually, you know what? That's not quite necessarily true, because if Self-Reliance wins this match, and then they win the next match against Perplexed, I think they actually overtake Deplete from Beyond in terms of seeding too. So
True.
That's not necessarily true either. But of course, this is definitely a more important match for Self-Reliance. So it's tough to say what you do at this point. Do you just go with your already established strategy, or do you go for a safety play? What do you think?
I think I think they have to go for the safety play. I think I would deal with all of the trash here that they still want to do. So I would deal with this next trash pack because this pack is very dangerous too. And there's still things that can go wrong here because they're pulling all of this trash here with the Cavaliers on top of the right side trash, which we have seen teams wipe to this spawn multiple times already. So that's definitely something I would do first. And once that is done and they're still ahead, I would deal with an obelisk. I definitely would. But now we see Rentari gathering all of these mobs here. Let's see if they can deal with this, because Fortified Raging makes this very difficult.
Oh yeah, I mean, usually when you're talking about this double DK comp, it's about getting that burst AoE down and getting mobs down early. But when you have Raging and no active soothes to get rid of the difficult Raging mobs, there's just a lot that can go wrong. And I think that's probably one of the worst rapid fire positions. I think if it went the other way around, if it went clockwise instead of counterclockwise, it would have had nowhere to go to dodge. Fortunately, it went the other way around. But now with everything entering Raging, it's all going to come down to that stuns. Once the stuns run out, Rentari just has to get out. He can't tank anything. But man, that was about as perfect as it gets. That was a beautiful pull for them.
Yeah, that was actually really well done. They saved their Shockwave, their Chaos Nova, and the Monk Stun for the very, very end. Even though it did DR, of course, but they still just wanted to save it for that Raging. And it looked like Rentari was on the way to the boss, and then he turned around. Did you see that? He looked like he was going boss direction, but then maybe the team said, you know what, let's play the Obelisk. So they're actually dealing with Samrak here, which is definitely the play I like to see, because they're ahead by quite a lot, so definitely not going to cost them. As long as they just kill the boss without having any major wipes, they're going to make it. So doing Samrak here is definitely the choice.
Okay, it looks like they were pulling it towards the other obelisk for a second there too. They were like heading off to the left a little bit, but no, they're just going to pull this straight to the boss. And you got to imagine, 3 obelisks with a boss. We saw that from Self-Reliance early on. But talking about Self-Reliance, Harudra has gone down to this massive trash pull that we just saw Deplete from Beyond pull off. They might be able to kite this trash out, but with everything at Raging, if anything gets hit here, if Mikkel pulls aggro on that, he's going to go down and lose a shock bot. It looks like they're going to be able to kite it out, but this is going to cost them a bunch of time.
Yeah, definitely just a lot of issues here for Self-Reliance, unfortunately. But now all eyes on Deplete from Beyond. Are they gonna make this pull with the 3 obelisks? We have Orgroth here, the tank buster without a hunter to taunt that Spirit Breaker off. So there's gonna be lots of pressure on Rentari, and his shield wall is not ready yet. So he needs to tank that debuff or just a leap away from it to make sure he doesn't get it. On top of that, you also have the Void Weaver, which constantly needs to be interrupted, and the Bloods just spawning the pools on the floor, making that room a lot less. There's not a lot of room to begin with, but now they have even less.
Yep, and Urgroth, Breaker of Heroes, has gone down. Of course, that being focused down because they don't have any hunters available to taunt it. Potentially, the Demon Hunter could taunt Netherwalk, one of the Spirit Breakers, but that's about all they have available to them. And of course, now with the Awakened mobs going down, they can just go on to deal with the intermission. I think that was one of the cleanest buster phases we've seen out of any teams. That was really impressive from Deplete from Beyond. And with that portion of the fight done, all they have to do is go up, click this, hack this. I don't know what
mainframe?
I don't know what to call it. Mainframe? Overcharge station is the actual word, but yeah, they gotta hack it. They gotta get down to the boss, and with everyone alive, it should be really easy to get through that DPS check.
Yeah, I'm super impressed by Deplete from Beyond here. They only had 1 death in this whole dungeon, and yeah, what a clean run. There's very little things that can go wrong here, except the DK's not making it up the stairs. But there we go. They're back now. Their overcharge station is being charged by Igloo, and now all they have to do is nuke this boss within the 20 seconds I believe they have, which is more than enough on a fortified setting with all damage dealers alive. So yeah, what a series here. Deplete from Beyond against Self-Reliance. Deplete from Beyond winning this 2-1. This means we're gonna have a tiebreaker between Self-Reliance and the boys.
Oh, it's gonna be